Challoner proved to be Newton's arch nemesis.
Challoner was the master counterfeiter of London in the first half of the 1690s. He claimed to have forged 30,000 pounds worth of currency, which is millions. I mean, it's like 4 or 5 million.
He was a major player then, so
Absolutely.
Great interest to Newton, obviously.
Indeed. William Challoner was actually genuinely impressive in his own right. He didn't just have the reputation for being a master criminal. He really was.
Newton's spies finally caught Challoner in 1698. Records of his interrogation and the master forger's personal plea to Newton begging for mercy have survived.
"Oh, dear sir, do this thing for me. My offending me has brought me to this point. Keep me from being murdered. Oh, dear God."
He's begging for his life, essentially, isn't he?
Yeah. Look at the signature. "Your near murdered, humble servant, William Challoner." But he's also desperately afraid. What on earth could have brought this guy sitting in Newgate jail, committing all these terrible crimes, into correspondence, literally, with Isaac Newton, the smartest man in the world?
Challoner's plea for mercy didn't get him anywhere. Today, crowds flock to the West End of Oxford Street to shop, but in Newton's time, the way led to gruesome death at the end of a hangman's noose. In 1699, William Challoner was dragged 5 kilometers through the streets to the infamous gallows known as the Tyburn Tree. A plaque at Marble Arch marks the spot where thousands of souls, including the master forger, were put to death.
That's it. That's it. This is the most notorious of the rather depressingly many execution grounds around here. Well, I mean, it was an almost industrial site for execution. I mean, the scaffolding that they built was this sort of big triangle, and they could hang 4 aside, so, 12 people at a time.
Oh, my goodness.
Isaac Newton had William Challoner hanged for counterfeiting, but was there another motive? Before he died, Challoner hinted that Newton was engaged in some kind of illegal activity. Did the great scientist have something to hide?
Newton kept an enormous number of records. There are something like 5 large folders of his mint documents in his own hand. There's this one folder left that catalogs his interrogations of coiners and counterfeiters and sort of general bad people. The only odd thing about it is that folder, though it's got something like 400 documents in it, really only covers about 14, 15 months of what was about 3 years of his activity in this area.
What happened to the rest of it?
There is one report from Newton's nephew-in-law that he once helped Isaac Newton sort of carry out some papers from the mint and burn them. We don't know what papers they are. Newton is not known for destroying records.
No.
I can't know what was in them, but I'd love to know if I could.
Exactly what the great scientist wanted erased from the record remains a mystery. But Newton himself was evidently engaged in work which he considered so valuable or dangerous that his notes had to be written in code. Records at the Royal Society reveal references made by Newton to the work of rival alchemists.
One of the interesting things about this document is that it's composed of a number of different small works, and some of them look simply like he's copying word for word. Yeah, this one here is very interesting. This is an alchemist, Philalethes, who went to Harvard. He was one of the first people to go to Harvard.
So he's an American alchemist.
That's right. He's taken extremely seriously by the English alchemists in the late 17th century because he developed a series of techniques for achieving the Philosopher's Stone.
Experts are particularly intrigued by Newton's use of the Latin term, regulus.
Well, let's take a look here at the Latin. It says the ingredients of composition of the regulus.
The Latin term harks back to the cryptic image of the green lion.
A lot of alchemical metals and symbols were connected with astrology, believe it or not. From what I recall, in the constellation of Leo, the lion, there's a star called Regulus, and which was known as the heart of the lion. Now, I have to wonder, I mean, this is really intriguing. I have to wonder if this green lion is really a reference to the heart of the lion, the Regulus of the lion.
Making the legendary Philosopher's Stone is said to have involved a chain of steps. The last critical step was the creation of a mysterious solvent known as philosophical mercury, the final ingredient that would create the stone itself. In Newton's manuscript, the blood pouring from the lion's mouth has been interpreted as philosophical mercury. The lion is the clue. According to the legend, to make philosophical mercury, the alchemist needed the heart of a lion, or Regulus. Encrypted in Newton's manuscript is an alchemical recipe for making Regulus. Could it mean that Isaac Newton believed he was just one step away from making the mythical Philosopher's Stone?
I'm pretty sure that he was after the Philosopher's Stone, and you know, as we look here. And then it gives us some alchemical symbols. We have this one right here. Now that's
Mars.
So that's iron, isn't it? And then we have this one. That's antimony, I believe, the ore.
This is very, very obscure. I mean, the only thing that I'm aware of is that you might be able to smelt antimony using iron, but it's certainly not obvious from this.
And then we can go along here, and what we see is, from this we get this verissime, the most true gold. That's interesting because whenever you see references to this is the most true gold or the most purified gold is a step towards the Philosopher's Stone.
It seems that Newton believed he had cracked the secret of the Philosopher's Stone. The results of his experiments encrypted in his Book of the Dark Arts.
I went in, and of course I was immediately...
Following Newton's notes, chemist Andrea Sella is attempting to make the magical substance known as Regulus. The metallic element antimony has to be extracted and melted with iron.
Newton's recipe said something about getting it up to about the melting point of silver.
Well, we're certainly above that now. We're well over 1,000 degrees. But what we really need to do is to pull this out. There's a lot of yellow discoloration on our crucible. I can actually see some silvery bits in there.
Some 300 years after it was written, Newton's recipe is put to the test.
This sure isn't subtle chemistry.
Whoa.
You can really see that kind of metallic
You
glint.
sure can.
But in fact, we haven't really got enough. It just hasn't coalesced enough to actually get something good out. It has a metallic sheet.
They failed to produce Newton's Regulus, a key ingredient apparently needed to make the mythical Philosopher's Stone.
You can imagine that Newton also faced the same types of difficulties. I mean, he was also experimenting, trying to replicate this chemical reaction, and it was sort of part of the puzzle that he was trying to solve.
It's actually an absolute...
But there is evidence from another experiment suggesting that Newton's method may work. Another high-temperature chemical mixture has produced a result that just may be the Regulus Newton was referring to.
That's gorgeous.
On the surface, you can see these incredible striations which tend to radiate out from a single point.
It appears that Regulus, the brightest star in the constellation Leo, the lion, was a hidden clue to the star-patterned material apparently needed to make the Philosopher's Stone. But the stone itself is nothing more than a myth. The alchemist's goal of turning base metal into gold has proved to be an unattainable dream. How far Isaac Newton went to pursue the legendary riches of the Philosopher's Stone remains a mystery. But a final clue may be found in Westminster Abbey, where he was buried in 1727.
When Newton died, his body was found to be full of mercury. It was symbolic of his 10-year quest to find the Philosopher's Stone.
Jerusalem. It's been a hotspot of religious and political upheaval for millennia, and the turmoil continues today. The focus of tension is the Temple Mount, sacred to both Jews and Muslims. It's dominated by the 1,300-year-old Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But the mount was also the site of Solomon's Temple. According to biblical legend, it housed the all-powerful Ark of the Covenant. Archaeologist Professor Shimon Gibson has lived and worked in the ancient city for 35 years. He's keen to explore a sprawling labyrinth of ancient tunnels under the spot where Solomon's temple once stood. Much of it is unexplored, and some believe it could conceal the lost Ark of the Covenant. Shimon Gibson has been compiling old maps and the written accounts of people who ventured under the Temple Mount.
There's something like 45 underground chambers and many, many conduits and tunnels. Since Crusader times, people have been digging under the Temple Mount, not archaeologists, I hasten to add, in the search for the Ark of the Covenant.
According to the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant holds the 10 Commandments and the terrible rod that brought on the 10 plagues of Egypt. The legend says that anyone touching them dies instantly. With no physical proof of its existence, the Ark is a mere story. Few archaeologists believe a physical relic still survives, but there are many theories and claims as to what and where it is. If the Ark does exist, Shimon Gibson says the Temple Mount is an obvious place to look.
The Ark of the Covenant is a wooden box. It was covered with gold and was held up by 2 poles. It was believed by the early Israelites to contain the Spirit of God. It was kept in Solomon's temple, but it's disappeared. We don't know where it is. It may be hidden in a subterranean space beneath the Temple Mount.
Gershon Solomon heads a radical Jewish group that wants to banish Muslims from the Temple Mount. He's convinced that he's heard the voice of God and that the Ark of the Covenant is beneath the Temple Mount.
We read in Chronicles that King Josiah, a righteous king from the house of David, commanded the Levites to take the Ark of Covenant and hide it underneath the Temple Mount in a secret place.
The entrance to the tunnel system is open to public view. One tunnel is exciting archaeologists. Warren's Shaft is a 12-meter vertical drop. It's named after Sir Charles Warren. Before becoming London Police Commissioner, the Royal Engineer was employed to carry out an archaeological survey of ancient Jerusalem in the 19th century. Some believe he was following clues relating to the city's biblical history.
straight away he decided that this must be the shaft by which, according to the biblical account, King David accessed the city and captured it.